Great. Hi, everyone.
All right, take
Thanks,
it away.
Nick.
Thank you. Good luck.
Awesome. So you guys will remember yesterday, Nick in his keynote kicked off with a word about purpose. And he said, every team really needs to think about the why behind what it's doing. So to tell you a little bit more about our customer success team at Gainsight, our why is to aspire to be the role model for the customer success industry. Now, this is really an imperative for us, right? We're a customer success team within a customer success software company. We've got to be the best. You all expect that we're the best. And this is a constant struggle for us because there's so much innovation that's happening in the community itself. So we're trying to do our best to learn from you all and to constantly incubate internally so that we can truly share a lot of new learnings. So what I want to do with you today is share with you something that we've been working on internally at Gainsight, which might be useful for the broader community because I imagine probably a lot of you are trying to do similar things. So I want to actually start by sharing a personal story from my childhood, beginning with when I was 10 years old. This is actually a photo of me when I was 10 years old. When I was 10, I was very shy. I spent a lot of time reading with my cat, which you can see on that table. And while I had a great group of friends, I was known as being the quiet one. Folks would often wonder, like, what's going on in Allison's mind? She seems to be thinking about a lot of things, but she doesn't always share those things. Broadly speaking, I was known as being the nice person in the group. Now, the thing about being nice is that it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like you're bottled up. And it doesn't always feel good. It doesn't feel like you can express yourself, right? So my mom has been an amazing role model to me. This is a photo of me and my mom last summer. Been a huge advocate for me my whole life. And she noticed a pattern when I was growing up that I was quite shy. And in particular, my mom, being like very engaged mom, noticed that on my report cards, quarter after quarter, semester after semester, my participation grades were really low. So she staged an intervention. She said, my daughter has so much to contribute. We've got to do something different. So she suggested that I visit a new school. This happened to be an all-girls school nearby. And she said, go check it out, see if it works for you. So I went, and I remember I came home, and I cried, and I sobbed. I hated it. And my mom said, what was it? What happened? And I said, all the girls there are really mean. They're super mean. And she said, what do they do? Did they make fun of you? Were they rude? Like, what did they do? And I said, well, they were really loud. And they joked all the time. And they were really boisterous. I probably didn't use the word boisterous. I don't think I knew what that meant. But I was so intimidated by this group. And she said, Allison, it sounds like these girls are really strong. You can be nice and strong at the same time. And that statement really struck a chord with me. It was this huge revelation for me. So I ended up going to that school, and over the next 8 years, went on this incredible journey where all the girls at my school who were so much stronger than me became incredible role models for me and really shaped the way that I grew up. So they inspired me to do things like join a Model United Nations team. Can I get a round of applause for anyone in the room who's done Model UN? Okay, I've got some fellow geeks here. So for those who don't know, Model UN is kind of like a debating society where you pretend to be a diplomat. You get a big head from this. And basically, the awards are given to the loudest public speakers. So I joined Model UN, and I actually won awards. I also became really active in my lacrosse team. I became captain of my high school lacrosse team. And I spent a lot of time giving motivational speeches to my team. It became such a part of my high school experience for me. And finally, this is actually Kirsten Dunst from Bring It On. This is not me. But in sort of Kirsten Dunst style, at one moment in high school, I organized a pep rally and staged a choreographed dance in front of the entire school where I was the lead dancer like Kirsten and totally embarrassed myself. But it was one of my most fun experiences in high school, a great moment. So today, if you were to ask some of my friends, the people closest to me, how would you describe Allison, they would say she's an extrovert. And she's an advocate for what she believes in. She's always at the top of my LinkedIn feed. It's kind of annoying. And they would also say she likes to organize parties on weekends. I think they would still tell you that that I'm nice. But they would also sometimes say that Allison is brave, sometimes, which is a small point of pride for me, given, honestly, how far I've come. Now, why do I share this personal story with you? I share it with you because I see a lot of CSM teams in the industry trying to be really nice to their clients. They want to be a good listener. They want to be attentive to their clients. They want to be receptive to feedback and contagiously positive. Now, all of these are great things, but they sometimes result in conversations with clients that go like this. I really like your team, so I bought your product. Then, your team asked me, what do you want to do in the product? What do you want to do? Honestly, I really had no idea what to say, but I offered a point of view, and I really had no idea if that was the right decision. Your team never pushed back on me. I felt like I was the one pushing the process. We still haven't gotten value today. I really want to know, how do your best clients use your product? That's what I want to do. You guys know best. So at this point, given that we haven't gotten value, this really just seems like a build exercise. And my IT team says they can do it. I can't defend this expense, honestly, if I'm not getting value. But no, this isn't personal. You have great people on your team. Now, this is the excruciating sound of a customer churning because our team was too nice. Now, I see this happen a lot in the industry, and also, I'll be honest with you, although I'd love to say that no client has ever churned from Gainsight, we do have churn. Clients have churned, and I have been on the receiving end of conversations like this. It really doesn't feel good. Now, I know that my team can be brave. We can be brave like Katniss and Peeta, I'm telling you, from the Hunger Games. But I think the challenge is, even if you're brave, you need something to be brave about. You need a point of view that you can advocate for. Now, speaking from personal experience, we have an extremely powerful platform at Gainsight. It is so sophisticated. You just saw some of the incredible capabilities that are possible. And this is a slide that we commonly use to describe all the capabilities of the Gainsight platform. Now, given the amount of things that you can do, there's always the risk that the client does things the wrong way. So over the past 6 months or so, we've made a really concerted effort to be more prescriptive with our clients. We've launched an initiative that we're actually calling our Prescriptive Initiative. It's one of our 5 company-wide initiatives for the year. And this initiative has resulted in things like the Customer Success Maturity Curve, which I shared with you yesterday morning, where we have 4 different stages of customer success maturity that we're trying to help our clients grow through, from the reactive stage to insights and actions to outcomes and then to transform. And yesterday I shared with you the units that we're using to help our customers grow along that maturity curve, which we call elements. Elements, again, are Gainsight solutions. So each one is a prescriptive approach for combining people, process, and the Gainsight platform to solve customer success business challenges. Now, you remember that the elements live on a periodic table of customer success elements. We just couldn't help but insert that geeky science term. And each of these elements includes our best practices for customer success, down to the level of how to specifically use each individual feature in order to achieve the outcome that you're looking to achieve in terms of that business challenge. Now, to give you a sense of what I mean about the specifics, I want to dive into a few of these elements in depth. So the first one I'll talk about is outcomes health. This is called CO. You can see the element in the upper left-hand corner of the slide for customer outcomes. You guys might remember that expression, customer success equals customer outcomes plus customer experience, or CS equals CO plus CX. This is what we mean when we talk about CO. Now, as part of this element, we're trying to help our clients take action based on whether their clients are achieving outcomes. This always gets a little meta when we're talking about customer success at Gainsight. So as part of this element, we're trying to monitor 4 key health measures using a framework that we call the DEAR framework. That stands for deployment, engagement, adoption, and ROI. And you can see on the right-hand side of the slide in the screenshot that these are actually 4 health score measures that we're helping our clients build. Also, as part of this element, we want to make sure that we're elevating risks when it looks like a client is not getting value. And at the end of the day, we want to be able to show the trends over time through dashboards, for example, that show that actually, our client is helping their clients achieve outcomes over time, that they're broad trends. So you can see as a part of this element, we're using scorecards. We're using the customer 360 page. We're using dashboards. We're using call to actions and specific playbooks. All of this is super prescriptive down to the small detail. Now, at the same time that we want to be standardized and prescriptive, we also want to recognize companies are different. In some ways, each of you is a snowflake. So we will be super consultative with our clients as well in understanding how do we need to depart a little bit from this standard foundation in order to make sure this meets your needs. Second example, renewal management. This is about consistently executing on renewals and developing accurate forecasts. As a part of this, we're going to be using very standard dashboards to prioritize accounts that can have the largest impact if you focus your efforts there to drive the renewal. Also, we're going to be executing retention plays across functions. We all know that sometimes it takes a village to actually renew a customer across account management, maybe sales, customer success, sometimes support. So as a part of this, we're going to have, as you can see on the right-hand side, specific calls to action in Cockpit and associated specific playbooks that help you understand, help your team sort of organize their activities around a given renewal. And finally, as part of this element, we're going to be forecasting renewals using health scores as well as a view into what's the progress that your team is having on each renewal. Have they sent out the paperwork? Have they had an alignment conversation with the executive? Have they gotten a verbal commit? We need to get as accurate at forecasting renewals as our sales team can be at forecasting their new business, right? We need to be using the same kind of rigorous methodology. And finally, a third example that I'll share with you of an element is services experience. This is actually one of the elements I am most excited about. I think a lot of us have worked with or managed services teams that historically have been very focused on revenue and cost metrics. They're thinking all day about how do we achieve a certain gross margin target? How do we achieve a utilization target? Now, we all know that those things are important. Certainly our finance team cares about them, our investors care about them. But at the same time, we know that services engagements aren't successful purely if they achieve a gross margin target or a utilization target. They need to achieve outcomes for clients. So as a part of this element, which we've actually implemented internally over the past few months on our services team, super proud of this group, we're going to be measuring, driving to measurable outcomes through onboarding, as well as projects that happen post-go live. We're going to be tracking project health according to specific health score metrics or health scores that will occur on, for example, the relationship 360 page in Gainsight if you have a relationship for each services engagement. You're seeing on the right-hand side of this slide an example of an implementation of this element where we're tracking a scorecard for the timeline. Are we actually on track for this services engagement? Is the scope, is there scope creep? Do we have the right resources on this project? So these are all the types of scorecards that we're going to be tracking over the course of the engagement to make sure that we're on track. And finally, we're going to be monitoring post-go live success, ensuring that we achieve a certain definition of value for the client. And we want to be able to report on the impact of services on customer success. For example, if you're choosing to work with, ensure your services team is investing, in some cases, free services to ensure that the renewal goes through, you want to be able to quantify at the end of the day, what was the annual recurring revenue impact that we had on our retention rate because of what we did in services. These are all the things that you can do as part of the services experience element. Now, when we first start talking with clients about elements, what we do is a maturity assessment. We will survey a number of different stakeholders at the client, typically on the customer success leadership team, as well as some other executives. And we'll ask them for each element, how would you evaluate your own maturity? Does this element exist in some way at your business? And if it does, are you doing it manually, in a semi-automated way, or in an optimized way? Now, based on the responses, and actually there might be a range depending on the given element, we're gonna collate that data and we're gonna read out to the client a maturity assessment. We're gonna give them a maturity score and help them understand for each element, how does your team feel that you're doing? From there, we're able to map where are the gaps with what are the client's objectives more broadly for this year, and then help create a roadmap for executing on elements over the course of the next several quarters to a year. Now, once we do that maturity assessment, the question becomes like, how do we actually implement? So my team has actually created an internal tool that we're using to roll out elements in a very standardized, prescriptive way with our clients. What you're seeing here is actually a user interface that, again, is internal for our team. And it's a periodic table embedded in the UI. For each of these squares, you can click on them and then configure in a very automated way the pre-built assets that we've defined as being best practice for that element. All those calls to actions, the playbooks, the rules, the dashboards, the journeys. These are the things that we want to make sure are in every implementation so that we're doing this repeatedly in a super high quality way. Now again, not every client is exactly the same. Your business models are different, your teams are different, your goals are slightly different. So with the standard foundation, we're going to be tweaking that and adjusting that to make sure it meets your needs. But I want to share this with you just to give you a sense of how prescriptive we really want to be. I'll give you a few examples of how these elements will look once you implement them. So Carl today talked a lot about these orchestrated journeys that we're trying to help our clients build. And here are a few examples. We've built a very prescriptive user wellness program journey. This is a part of the adoption management element. Another example, a renewal reminder outreach as a part of the renewals management element. A quarterly NPS program as part of the customer experience element. And an automated onboarding workflow as part of the tech touch element. On that last workflow, automated onboarding, you can see how this will look. Right? Like this is the level of detail that we're trying to be prescriptive about. As a second example, I'll show you how Cockpit can look when you implement elements. So you've got, as examples here in the headers, adoption management, advocate engagement, customer experience. We've got specific calls to action for each of these elements that show up in Cockpit because we've implemented those. Final thing I'll mention in terms of how we're executing on elements is a prescriptive way in which we are implementing for our smallest customers. Give me a shout out if you're a startup. Do we have some startups in the room? Got some startups. So if you're a startup, you're going to want to roll things out super quickly, right? You want super fast time to value. You don't want to reinvent the wheel because you don't have time. So we've built an onboarding process that we call Essentials, which is our fast time to value onboarding process, where with a simple click of the button, our team can configure pre-built assets for you. So when we roll this out internally, we had to do a lot of thinking about how we make sure that the periodic table of elements doesn't just end up as being a post-sales tool, but actually it's something that we talk to our clients all the way across the journey, from the first time they visit our website, come to an event, to our sales meetings, to our demos. We need to make sure that elements is truly baked into everything that we do. So we spent a lot of time actually thinking as an executive team and broader leadership team, how do we show for each team what's in it for them? Right? And I imagine when you guys do this internally, maybe you've done it already, you know how important it is to get that kind of cross-functional alignment. So, we talk with the product team about how valuable elements can be as a framework for driving adoption of new releases. We're going to map every new feature to the elements that it supports and prioritizing enhancement requests that we get from clients. We're working with our engineering team to ensure that they can learn more about customer use cases through the lens of the elements that they implement. We're working with our marketing team to create even more structure for the thought leadership that we produce. We're working with our sales team to help make sure that they are up-leveling conversations by discussing business challenges that are part of the elements framework. In solution consulting, we want to make sure that our demos, that the features that we talk about are mapped to the objectives that our clients have, which are embodied by the elements. And our client outcomes team, which we call CSM, we're going to be using elements as a fast track to upgrade clients and demonstrate outcomes in executive business reviews. On our services team, we're going to be making sure that we're translating best practices into configuration so that with every new onboarding project, we're making sure customers get up to speed the right way. And finally, on our support team, they're really excited because we're now going to have more standardized configurations to troubleshoot. Every client hasn't necessarily reinvented the wheel, and there's going to be more documentation of client instances. So if you'd like to learn more about Elements, there are a few ways. One is all the podcasts and blog posts that we're going to be producing this year, not all of them, but a lot, are going to be tying back to Elements. You can check out a demo of Elements at the Gainsight booth, so you can see this in more depth. If you're a client, you can talk to your Gainsight Client Outcomes Manager to enroll in the Elements program. And of course, we've had our Science of Customer Success track going on yesterday and today about specific elements as well. Now, before I wrap up, I wanted to discuss sort of a broader thing that is worth thinking about if you're going to roll out a prescriptive initiative. So, even if you have a maturity curve and your own version of a periodic table, it's still going to require being really brave. And I think over the course of our lives, there are a lot of messages that we receive that disempower us, that make us feel like it's tough to be brave. Just a few that I've listed out. I hear, from the time I was little, nice girls don't get angry. We hear strong boys aren't artistic. We hear it's weak to cry, that you should get in line, that startup job that you took is too risky, that you should own a home at this point, that you should have made more money, that you should be spending more time with your kids, and that you haven't made it far enough. We hear these messages, I think, all day long, and it's easy to get super self-critical, and I think to deny ourselves that ability to be really brave. I would say, in general in our society as well, we hear messages that power is not something that's good, that power corrupts. There are celebrity takedowns, and even the blockchain movement, which I mentioned yesterday, is something that I geek out about. A huge part of the blockchain movement is about removing power wherever it exists. And I think that sometimes there can be good reasons for that. But I would also say power can be used for good or for evil. And I think our clients need us to use power for good, for their best interests. They need us to be brave. I think our teams need us to be brave on their behalf. So on an ending note, I would ask, how will you be brave this year? Thank you so much.